So guys, this is a review on the Simpson strong tie CPT66Z concealed post base. This is one among the many products that the Simpson strong tie sells. So this one is used to hold 6x6 posts, which you can use for building pergola, decking, carports and the sort. So out of the box you got the standoff plate, which is 1 inch from the ground. So this will hold the post on top of it, and it's supposed to keep rain away from the base of your post so that it doesn't get wet. The next part in this is this flitch plate, and I want to say that the entire thing is made of mild pre-galvanized steel. So there are markings on this flitch plate which shows how you need to align it on the post when you drill the holes for the dowels. So talking about dowels, there are 3 12mm dowels which comes with the in the pack, and these will go in the eye holes which you see on the flitch plate. And finally you got 2 square washers, and you use that to anchor the bolts onto the plate. So you slide it over there like that, which I'm showing you in the video, and then you just drive in your anchor bolts or your coach bolts to hold it in place. Now, one thing to note on this flitch plate is how you need to place that on your posts. So before you drill the holes for the dowels, which goes in like that, you need to make sure that your arrow marks on the side of the flitch plate actually aligns with the base of the post. Now, let me just explain it a bit more closer. That's the arrow mark on the flitch plate, and you need to align the flitch plate in such a way that it is perpendicular or to the post, and that's the center of the flitch plate, which should be more or less in the center of your post. Now this post base or the shoe will slide in over there, and you need to leave that 1 inch gap. So what we'll do next is use this flitch plate as a template to mark the dowel positions. So this is what is there on the box, so just place it on the post. Make sure you align the arrow marks, as I explained it before, to the base of your post. And then in this case I'm using a speed square to make sure that it is parallel to the base. And once you have this in position, take a pen or a marker and mark the center of the dowel positions in which you need to drill the holes. Now to drill the holes, I'll be using a 13mm auger bit. The dowels are only 12mm, but you need to leave it a little bit more of a gap so that the dowel can slide in a bit more easier. So here with the auger bit, I just marked in the positions, and I'm using a straight jig, and with a straight jig you will get nice parallel holes. You could use your hand and try and make the holes perpendicular to the angle in which you're drilling, but the chances are it is going to go slightly off. So it's always advisable to use a straight hole jig like this one. And I have a video coming up where I'll be doing a little bit of more experiments with the straight hole jig, and if you are interested you could watch that later. So that's the first hole done, and I just continue drilling the other 2 holes as well. You know, I'm just making sure that the holes align with the flitch plate's holes, and it does. The next what we'll be doing is marking the center of the post by flipping it over, and this is where the actual flitch plate will slide in. So here I'm measuring the width of the 6x6 post, and it's actually 5.5 inches rather than 6. So after I got the center of it, I just marked it, and then I just made sure that the flitch plate will lie bang on the center of it. So with a Sharpie pen again, after making some marks, I can now just proceed and join it with my speed square, and that'll be the path on which I'll be using my circular saw to cut the groove. So here I'm just flipping it over to the parallel side on the bottom and repeating the same procedure, and marking the center again. And this is because my circular saw is got a width of only like 2.5 inches, so it wouldn't cut this 5.5 inches in one go, so I'll need to cut it on both the sides. So here I'm aligning my circular saw directly on the line and I'm going with it. It's always good to use a sharp blade when you're cutting things like this. So I did replace my old circular blade with a new one. So here I flip the post over and repeated the same step. So from this angle you can see how the two cuts which I made on both the sides are right now, and they don't join the middle. So to get to that last bit, what I'll be using is a combination of my hand saw and a Japanese pull saw. So here I'm just madly going around with a saw, and I finally managed to make sure that both the edges marry up together. So with a chisel I just did some final cleaning up, and this is how it finally looks like. So if you're a casual DIYer, you probably wouldn't have a 6-inch circular saw. So you could see the problem with using a 2.5-inch saw, that it will probably not meet up in the middle. So to overcome this, I had a wild idea to use a reciprocating saw. So here what you're seeing is I'm just making a jig out of pallet wood so that the shoe of my reciprocating saw can slide in and out. So I need to say that this was actually a bad idea, because the reciprocating saw has got a lot of vibration on it, and the cut didn't end up going that great. But for the purpose of demonstration, I decided to include that in the video anyway. So here it is, and starting off with cutting it across, and this actually took a lot more time than using a circular saw. The amount of vibration was unbelievable that I actually had to stand on top of my garden bench to hold the post in place. And here I'm just using a chisel again to clear off some of the edges. Surprisingly, the cut was decent enough, and you can see the flitch plate slides in freely, and there you can see the holes within the flitch plate aligning with the holes which we drilled on the post base, on the post. So with that out of the way, I decided to do a third step, and this time using my straight hole jig to cut the slot. So I used a Stanley knife, and with my speed square I marked it, and then I went with a straight hole jig and drilled quite a number of holes over there as steady as I could. This was relatively an easy job, but among the three I would always suggest to use a circular saw. So using a circular saw, you get better control on your cuts, and even though it didn't meet up in the middle, you could still use your hand saw and join the two edges. So with this straight hole jig, you do get consistent holes over there, but the actual finished cut is a bit ragged, and then you need to go back with a chisel and then clean it up. So here with the straight hole jig, I am drilling it on three sides, on both the side face of the flitch plate as well as on the bottom. This is to remove the maximum amount of wood from the middle. And then I end up using the chisel again, as I mentioned before, and I just cleaned up all the ragged edges. So with that, all the three posts are now being cut where it'll slide over the post base holder. So the next part is to place it on your concrete pier or your post and mark the screw holes, or rather the holes where the anchor bolts will go in. So I just gently kept it in place, used my Sharpie pen and marked the center of the holes on the flitch plate. And what I'll be using is a M10 100 mm sleeve anchor bolts. Just Google this to find where you can buy it from your nearest shop, and that's how it will look like once it goes into the concrete base. So with a hammer drill, gently go ahead and drill the holes. So that's a cutout from the Simpson website on how it actually looks like. When you're drilling with your hammer drill, it really doesn't matter that it needs to be perpendicular to your concrete base. Even if it's in a slight angle, when you tighten the sleeve anchor bolts, it will still hold it in place. So with a hammer, just whack it in, and with the spanner ratchet, tighten up the nuts. So this is my second concrete post, where I've just repeated the same step essentially, and you can see me here hammering down the anchor bolts and then just tightening it up with my socket ratchet. Now this is my third location where I need the post base to sit in, and this is actually on a granite stone on my patio. So rather than making a new concrete post, I just decided to drill it on top of the stone itself. The stone is around 2 inches thick, and it sits on top of around 4 inches of concrete. So 6 inches of that base is more than enough to hold the post. So it's essentially the same technique, and there I'm just using my son's balloon pump to remove the dust from the holes. And place the flitch plate in location, and just repeat the same thing essentially. That is, put the washer down and then drive in the anchor bolts with the hammer, and then just tighten it up with a socket ratchet. And there you see, it's strong as anything, and it won't budge anywhere. Now, probably by this time you're tired of hearing my voice, so here's some good background music coming up. So what I'm doing next is just spray paint at the bottom of the post, and then use a grey primer to spray paint the whole flitch plate and the bolts and even the top of the concrete post. This is just so that the rain doesn't go and damage these things, and even though they are galvanized steel, you never know how these things will end up after say 3 or even 5 or even 10 years. So now it's the moment of truth. So I got the first post up over there, and what I'll be doing is I'll be just lowering the post onto the flitch plate, making sure that the drilled holes on the post aligns with those on the flitch plate. So after checking that, I just took a bubble and made sure that it is plumb on both the sides. To be frank, it wasn't plumb on one side, but it really doesn't matter. And then just drive in the dowels in and make sure it's somewhere and it sits in the center of the post like that. So with the first post done, I picked up the second one and essentially repeated the same thing. I slid it over onto the standoff and kicked it in place, made sure it is plumb, and then drove in the dowels as you see over here. So in my case, I'm building a pergola which is attached to the house, so I did go in and drive in a few more anchor bolts on the side which you see over here. So there is a video coming up if you're interested in viewing how I build this pergola. So I'm just in the stage of editing that, and it should be up in say a few months time or something from now. The third post went in the same way as the first post. and that's how it all looks like. The 3 posts completely aligned off the ground 1 inch, and it sits on the CPT66Z post base. So I've also got another video on using a different Simpson strong tie post, which is the APB 100-150. I'll leave a link in the description below and probably a card at the very end. If you're interested, you could click on that and have a look at it. So essentially, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below as well. And do consider subscribing again, because I do have similar kind of videos coming up where I'll be showing you how I built my Pergola. And do also check the other videos which I've already uploaded, where I've done some tool reviews and similar kind of things. So that's it from me, and thanks for watching.